Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Earnest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, even go to Spotify, give us a rating for the podcast. It'll definitely help us out. We are in season 2, episode number 27. And just like any other episode, we are here with our one of our special guests. Today we have Miss Hayley Lisa. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, Ernest. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
No problem. First of all, let me say thank you for being on. I know you could be doing anything else at this time, but you are here with me, and I definitely appreciate it. So let's jump right in. And Miss Hayley, why don't you tell our listeners who you are and what it is that you do?
Well, my name is Hayley Lisa, and I'm better known as the Divorce Coach for Men. That is the name of the website, thedivorcecoachformen.com. And I help men go through the divorce process and navigate the choppy waters and help them reclaim their power as they're going through the process. And it entails so much and everything about the divorce process, whether it's getting through the divorce, co-parenting, life after the divorce, every facet of it. And it's usually a big chapter of someone's life. So there's a lot to navigate through.
Man, first of all, let me say I thank you for being who you are, for doing that type of work. Unfortunately, I have experience going through a divorce myself, so I'm sure at some point I could have used your help. But it's rare. I've had a couple on the podcast, but it still is rare when I come across women who are in the business of helping men. There definitely is a lot of support for women for different things, especially when it comes to marriage and divorce. There's a lot of support for women, but I've found that in some cases there's not so much support for men unless it's by other men. So I'm always intrigued and happy at the same time when I'm able to come across someone who's a woman and who's looking out for men. So what was it that made you decide to help men instead of just going with the norm and working with women?
That's always the $1,000,000 question that I've been asked for 10 years. And, and like you, I also have been divorced, not once, but twice. I have filed for divorce twice from my husband's. And, it was during my second divorce. I divorced my husband for that we were married nearly 20 years. And as we were going through it, I realized there was so much support for women, like you just said, whether it's Facebook groups, therapists, divorce coaches were just, beginning to, make a presence. Um, Whereas men, there was nothing. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, if he had support, I think this would go so much better for him. Even though it was an amicable divorce, my second divorce, there was nothing available, 10 years ago, especially. But, so much has changed in those 10 years, but really just for women and especially moms. If you're a mom out there who's going through a divorce, there's a plethora of resources for you. But sadly, there is very few for men. And I also realized and looked at it through the lens of a mother. My son is now 28, but I also realized that if he were to get married and, God forbid, have to get a divorce down the road, I asked myself, would there be resources for him? Or is he going to find himself like men do today with almost no support? And men are not supported. They're so underrepresented in the divorce process. But I have to tell you, Ernest, it's a challenge, as a female to be a supporter and work with men. And I say that because you get a lot of slack. I'm going to be very honest with you.
Yeah.
Women, will be your biggest critic. They will, refer to you as, a traitor. You're not supportive of women. You don't like women if you're supporting men. It couldn't be farther from the truth. The fact is, I am a woman. Of course, I support women. I like women. But because I help men does not necessarily mean I don't support women. And I try to make it clear to people that I'm helping the family. When I'm working with a client, okay, my ultimate goal for him, and I tell them that early on in the process, is for him to have a very healthy co-parenting relationship with his ex. That's the ultimate goal. And with that being said, I'm trying to get him to be a team player with her. Okay. So in essence, I'm helping the whole family, but just, on the back end with men, but women sometimes don't want to see that, sadly. And so you have to have thick skin, I think, if you're a female and support men.
Yeah, I follow a young lady on TikTok, and on there she has, man, like maybe like 500,000 followers or whatever. And but her platform is for, supporting men, mainly in relationships, and she's like, we got to do better as women, whatever. And she often posts because her biggest critics are women, and it's like, why are you mad at me because I want you to treat your man right? You know what I'm saying? It's like it don't make sense. And then I always say, even if that's your viewpoint, do you have children like yourself? Do you have a son? So what is it that you want for your son? Do you want your son to be treated the way you're treating, whoever, or would you like your son to be treated correctly? Because your son is a man, and at one point he's going to come across, a young lady that he's going to like. And so what kind of treatment do you want him to receive from her? And like you said, if they end up going to divorce and through a divorce, do you want him to have support? Like, take yourself out of it for a minute, and look at it from that viewpoint. But like you said, why it is, I have no idea. But it's like women seem to feel like so threatened, when there's help for men. And it's like there's so much, like you mentioned, so much help for women. It's like, so why are you upset? If you want the help and you see how much help and support there is for you and the things that you're dealing with, why would you not want that for, let's just say, your brother or your uncle or your son? Why wouldn't you want that same support for them? And I don't have the answer to it.
Well, I have a theory on that. And my theory is this, that men in our society, okay, have been painted as the villain and the aggressor, okay, in the divorce story. It's played out in Hollywood movies,
Mhm.
and, social media, and sadly, Americans and also Canadians view men as always the aggressor, and they're the bad guy in the story. And the moment you have someone shedding light on the fact that that is not true, not necessarily true at all, and if it's coming from a woman who is shedding light on that truth, you are going to get a lot of critics. I've lost friendships along the way, women who just felt that it was either my friendship with them or support men, which is very sad. But that is my theory on that women don't want that narrative to go away, because if they do, then maybe the family courts won't be so biased against men. Because let me tell you, Ernest, I don't know if you ever had to go through family court, but that is not a good place for a man to wind up, is family court.
Yeah,
Not,
unfortunately, I have been there.
okay.
And the state of Indiana, which is where I am now,
Mm,
is a woman's state. So is the laws, especially in the family law, family division, is set up to support the women.
yes.
And we'll get into that a little bit later, because I have a I have my own thing on that. But it's a storyline, like you said. It's a storyline that's been passed down from generation to generation. And I remember when I was younger, probably was eighth grade. No, I don't think I was eighth, maybe seventh grade, and it was the first time that I seen a girl beat up a guy. You know, and the whole thing behind it was they got into an altercation. It was a girl and a guy, and the guy said, "I'm not going to hit you." He's like, "I'm not going to, I don't hit girls, whatever." And it
Mm,
was like, that were in her mind, that was the green light. And so she just attacked him. And I'm looking at it, and he's still saying, he's like backing up or whatever. And he's like, "I'm not going to hit you." But at the same time, she's punching him and hitting him and everything. And I'm like, that's it right there. It's like, if someone was to come and say, well, a girl and a guy got into an altercation, you automatically think, oh, he's wrong for doing this or whatever. But when in reality, the woman was the aggressor. And, there are times when the women are the aggressor in, whether it be in marriage and whatever the situation is. And because that narrative is so painted as the women being the victim, that you have all the support for them, even in their wrong. Even when they're wrong, there's still support for them. And like when we talk about, I know one of the things that I wanted to bring up was parental alienation. And I wanted you to talk about that a little bit. But even in those situations where the child is separated from the other parent, is automatically like, oh, well, the child needs to be with the mom because the dad must have did something wrong. And it's like, no, that's not always the case. And in some cases, I'll speak for my case specifically. When I got divorced with my first marriage, and in Indiana, like I said, it's a woman's state, so it was automatically like, okay, the child goes with the mom. And it's like I had no say so. And it's like, oh, you want the child to be with you? Oh, well, you got to prove to me that you're worthy. And I'm like, why is that? She don't have to prove that she's worth. Not saying that she wasn't, but it was just the bias that
right.
automatically, I'm kicked to the side as the parent, and I have to prove my worth as a father just to be in my daughter's life, as I should be. And I'm still, like I said, I don't have the answers. I don't know why that is. But one of my questions is, even with the parental alienation. First of all, I would like to define it. for those who don't know what it is.
Mhm.
But one of my questions is that I've found, which is I think is crazy to me, is that a lot of the parents who commit parental alienation at some point themselves was alienated from a parent. And it's like, to me, I would think that you would be able to look past that and be like, you know what, I understood what I went through, being with one parent and not the other. So I don't want to afflict that on my child. But in reality, I find that it's not that way. It's almost as if they're like, well, I turned out okay, so it's going to be okay for them. So how would you, I mean, how would you address that? First of all, again, like I said,
So,
kind of explain the definition of parental alienation, and then kind of how would you, or should I just say, what's been your experience with it?
well, first, let me just touch on one other thing to back up. You were talking about, women being the aggressor, and I couldn't agree with you more, Ernest. A few weeks ago, I wrote a blog titled "Who is Truly the Aggressor?" And I put it on the website and social media. I cannot tell you, okay, the response from women. My social media blew up with messages because I was shedding light that men are not always the aggressor, and
Mhm.
they did not want to hear that. And it was amazing to me that that simple little blog, which was not painting all women as aggressors, but
Right.
shedding light that it's 50-50. I mean it's not always the man. um it really touched a nerve. It was interesting to see that. Crazy.
Yeah.
But as far as parental alienation, that is when a parent, we'll call them they're the alienator. They are going to emotionally, psychologically manipulate the children against the father or the mother, but let's say the other parent, which is the targeted parent.
Hmm.
They are going to do their best emotionally to pretty much brainwash them into rejecting, fearing, um, hating that targeted parent. And I'm here to say that it's most often men are the victims of parental alienation. Okay, most women are the alienator in custody issues. I am doing this 10 years. I don't know if I've met even two or three men who were actually trying to alienate their children from their mother. Whereas early on, and it's one of the reasons actually I decided also to work with men. Early on in my practice, I was working with both men and women. And I saw women coming to me, early on in the process with an agenda. And that agenda was to basically alienate and sever that relationship between father and children. And they were going to create a narrative, for the courts, for their and for their children to believe. And it's so sad because I don't believe they realize the detrimental effects it
Hmm.
has. And you said something where a lot of people who are the alienating parent are victims of it themselves when they were growing up. And why do they continue? I don't think when they were being raised, they realized what was happening, that, they were probably thinking this is the norm. And
Hmm.
so therefore it becomes a cycle. And I've seen generations of parental alienation run in families. And it's only now, today, in the last, I'd say 5 years, that we're actually, talking about it. There was no such term as parental alienation, 20 years ago. You never heard of such a
Right.
term. But I believe it's people like that who had that in their own childhood. They don't recognize it. It's like they're going through life, with this false representative of reality, that, because they missed out, whether it was a father or mother, in their life. So it's how they're wired.
Yeah, and I really, I I can't necessarily comprehend it or sympathize with them. That's not the word I want to use, but I use that because I was raised in a two-parent household.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily have the experience of one or the other. Whether my father wasn't there or my mother wasn't there, they both were there.
Mhm.
my entire life. So I don't know what that experience is to have one parent, and but having the experience of having both parents, to me, that has always been the goal.
Mhm.
So even when I was in the situation with my daughter after being divorced, and now have to figure out this whole co-parenting thing and how this is going to work, and definitely being in the court, which we can talk about that a little bit, is like the playing field is so unlevel. It's so weighted down on one side. With the courts. I don't even know why it haven't even been a overhaul. And so I'm going to ask you, just in your case or in your experience, what would be some of the biases that you've seen in the criminal, not criminal, it should be criminal, but in the family courts, excuse me, against men? Because I would rather you do, excuse me, I don't know what that is. I would rather you bring it up, because I don't want it to seem like, oh, just another man talking about the courts, whatever. No, it's a truth that there is a bias in the family court.
Oh,
So
yes.
I would like you to just speak on just some of the biases that you've come across in your time of working with men, you know, and how it even affected some of the people that you've worked with, like how it affected some of the outcomes.
Well, I will say this. Yesterday, this is a great example. Yesterday, I did a consultation with a gentleman, and he's in Southern California. And he was telling me that he has been going through a contentious divorce for a year and a half. They have a 3-year-old daughter, and his wife is looking to relocate to the state of Texas for no other reason other than, just wanting to move to Texas. She's been a resident of California for 25 years. He is born and raised in California, has a family business. He's only known California. His daughter has only known California. Well, he was telling me yesterday during this consultation that in California, what they do is they call them a child evaluator. And this child evaluator will conduct their interviews, obviously, with both parents, parent and child, and so forth, and come up with a finding. And so this child evaluator is put in this position where they have to choose mom or dad because she wants to leave the state. So the child evaluator came back and said, well, if he had to absolutely choose, even though this man is a wonderful father, I'm going to say the child would be best with the mother. Okay. Because of that, she is now going to be able to leave and go to Texas. I find that heart-wrenching to hear. Years ago, if you were wanting to leave the state and you went through a divorce, you had to prove unusual circumstances, that you couldn't make a living, you had no support. I mean, it had to be extreme, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but now things have changed so drastically that, especially like in California, where you don't have to prove unusual circumstances. And so this woman is now most likely in the next 6 months going to be allowed to leave. So that's the first, to me, that's a major bias right there. When, a court is appointing a child evaluator, to choose mom or dad, there shouldn't be a choice. It should be equal shared parenting. And,
Right.
you know, I don't know. It really touched a nerve yesterday listening to this man and, doing everything for his daughter. But sadly, she's going to leave the state most likely. And now he's going to have to continue this relationship, by flying out to Texas twice a month. That's terrible. But my question is, would they do that with a dad? Would they do that and say, "Here, let's give the child to the father, and mom, you can leave the state, and mom can just fly out, and see the child"? I highly doubt that. I know that's probably controversial to say, but I don't believe they would do that if the roles were reversed. And so, the biggest bias I see obviously is custody, the shared parenting time. And, I'm like you. Why isn't it that we don't have an overhaul of the family court system in every state? You know, um, every state, to me, in my opinion, the starting point should always be equal shared parenting. Mom and
Right.
dad are both going to start off with 50-50. Now, if there's issues such as abuse, alcoholism, drug use, whatever it is, of course, then that would dictate otherwise. But the starting point, a man should be able to walk into court, Ernest, and not fear that he is not going to even have a 30% shared parenting time. And I'm here to tell you, I talk to men every week, and I talk to men usually the night before they're going into their custody hearing, and they don't walk out usually with 50-50.
Right.
And it's very, very sad. The second bias I see all the time is, I'm going to say something again that you're probably going to get some comments. I'm going to say it though. Alimony. Alimony and child support. It is not fair. I mean, I have men who, first of all, I work with men who are wonderful fathers, okay? Wonderful fathers. And they pay their child support and they pay the alimony that they have to. But when I see what they have to pay, I can't believe it. It doesn't resonate with me. How is it that, a woman wants $3,000 a month for her wardrobe? You know,
Mm.
and this, I think it's so unfair with not just alimony, but the child support. If a father, let's just say hypothetically, gets 50-50, why is he paying so much in child support? The children are only with him 50% of the time, and they're only with the mother 50% of the time. So those are the three major biases I see personally in the family courts that I see all the time.
Yeah. And I was just gonna let you say it,
Let
But
me
you know
be the bad guy.
but I definitely again, with me having gone through divorce and actually having to be in that court and be in that, in that space, I definitely agree 100%. Like I said, in Indiana, it's a woman's state. So before you even step in the court, you already know the child is going with the mother, for one. You already know you're going to be paying child support that may not even be reasonable. In my case, one of the things that happened with me, actually the last time that I actually had to go to court and stand before the judge, um, with child support, I work in construction,
Okay.
and so out here in the Chicagoland area, we have winters, and when the winters come, we don't work, but this is every year. It's nothing new. It's not epiphany. This is what happens.
Yeah.
But I will always find myself in the winters standing before this judge, and the judge saying, why have you been late on child support? Same reason I was late last year. You know what I mean? It's like it's wintertime, work is slow, we're not working, but what I would do when I filed my taxes, I would take my taxes, I would pay, wherever I'm back, get back on track and run through the summer, and it'd be no problem. And so, but this was every year,
Mm,
and I'm coming for this judge every year, and I'm like, Your Honor, it's the same thing last year, the same thing I told you last year. You know what I mean? And the very last time that I was there, she was like, well, we're going to help you catch up, so we're going to increase your child support by $50 a
oh,
week. So my child support went up an extra $200, and I'm like, how is that helping me? You know what I mean? I'm like, that is, and it was like nothing to her. She was just like, oh, so yeah, you're working now. I'm like, yeah, I'm back to work now. It's getting warm. We're starting to work. It's starting back up. Oh, okay. So we're going to help you catch up on your child support. We're going to increase it by $50 a month. I mean, a week, which is an extra $200 a month. And, and that's what it is until she changed it back. So from that day on, I was paying an extra $200, a month more than I was already paying. But my thing was, if the reason why we're here, knowing that every year in the winter things get slow, payment's going to get behind because the work is not there for me to support myself, let alone support, my child or anything else. why would you then stack the deck against me already knowing that? And that's one of the things with the child support, and just with the system as a whole, but definitely with the child support. It's just like is crazy, and is not new. I think that's the thing that amazes me the most. Like, it's not a new problem. It's something that's been going on for years and years and years, and it's not new. And it actually, to me, it seems that it's gotten worse over the years. Now, especially with the child support, where it's like, okay, if you get behind so much, like, okay, now we're going to throw you in jail. Well, if you
Yes.
throw me in jail, now I can't work. Now I can't support my child. Now I can't. It's like, so it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm already in a bad place. And to make things better, in your case, you're going to put me in a worse state. So now you lock me up and I lose my job. Now there's no income coming in for anyone, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. And we have the people in charge, the judges, who's supposed to be the ones that's smart enough to make these decisions, or can choose to uphold, whatever decision that they make. And it's like, really, that's what you came up with? It's like,
Here's the thing. Well, they're setting you up for failure, really, and
mm-hmm,
especially in your case. You would think that in your case, it would be stipulated in your agreement that the months of, October through um, late April, the
mm-hmm,
child support goes down. It's adjusted, and so you don't have to keep going into court year after year after year. So that it's like they're setting you up for failure. And the other thing is, the reason they don't want to make it make sense is because they don't want to lose the money.
mm,
The states don't want to lose the money they're making. They make a fortune. It's billions of dollars every year that these states are making off of, child support. And
mm.
yeah, it's not good.
Okay, we're gonna get off child support.
And the foster care system, that's really what I meant to say, is that they make money on the foster care system. They're quick to put the kids in foster care because, again, it's a money maker for the states.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's one thing that I've never quite understood either, how you would take a child and put them in foster care without first putting them with the other parent.
right.
It's like, because I've even heard stories of, dads having to fight to get their child out of
Mhm.
foster care because the court, for whatever reason, whether the mom gave the child up or the courts took the child away from the mom, but they put the child in foster, in the system without even notifying the father, without even, that should be the first person that you notify, when it comes to your child. And then so these fathers are left fighting the system to get their own children back, when that it shouldn't even be like that. That should have been the first person that they communicated with to have these children, because it's their children, you
Right.
know.
Right. And it's not an easy process. Like you said they have to fight. It literally becomes this fight. They have to go through all the red tape and jump through hoops to get their child out of foster care. Absolutely. It's awful.
Yeah, I don't understand it. But we're gonna get off the we're gonna get off the system, because we'll be on there forever. But
Yes.
we're just talking about not necessarily the system, but just men and divorce. I've found that is a misconception of, even with men and divorce. First of all, because a lot of women don't think that, or don't feel that, men are affected by divorce.
Mm.
It's like, oh, you guys just, keep it moving and move on, and you're not affected at all. And I think that's kind of even adds on to why the system is set up like it is. But because it's like, oh, it don't affect the dad anyway, so we're just going to put everything towards the mom because she's the ones that's affected the most. So I know in my case, it was not necessarily, I didn't have a bad divorce. There definitely were some things that could have gone better, just from the point of the system.
Mhm.
um But even in the midst of that, I was separated from my child. Once we separated homes, now you're going through that visitation schedule, and then you only got certain days that you see the child, and
Mhm.
all of that. And I was definitely affected by it 100%. So what would be some of the stories or something that maybe you have experienced firsthand with some of the fathers that you've worked with, um, even just expressing how they were feeling going through this process? Because again, it's like, they think, some people think that we're not affected. It's like, oh, he's going to get over it. But again, the woman got all this support, because she's the one that needs it. But it's like, yeah, but the men are affected just as much. So what has been some of your experience in that, and even some of the stories of some of the fathers expressing to you, their emotions and everything going through this process of divorce?
Ernest, men hurt too. And I say that all the time. And you know it, men know it. However, society doesn't want to acknowledge that fact, and women do have the attitude, like you said, or this mindset, I should say, that, the divorce does not affect a man. He moves on. It's not true at all. Men and women are wired so differently. And so I'm here to say that men, first of all, men are more likely to fall into a very deep depression, more likely than women. Did you know that the suicide rate, men are 8 times more likely to commit suicide during a high conflict divorce or custody issue than a woman? That's a fact.
Mm.
That right there tells you that men are gravely affected by divorce, or the separation of from their child. They have depression, and men resort to behaviors to cope, okay, such as alcohol, sexual behaviors. Maybe they'll work too much,
Mhm.
anything to even avoid the new home. But that's how men usually try and cope with the stress and the anxiety. But I have to say that once a man reaches out for help, and that's usually the biggest stumbling block for men. Women are more likely to reach out for support. That they tend to foster good relationships with people, and so when the time of a divorce hits, women usually have like these solid friendships and support systems already in place, whereas men don't usually have that. So I always say, reaching out for help is an act of bravery for men, because they are told from a very early age that they need to be tough, that the boys can't cry. If they fall, they need to just get up and deal with it. And it's really a disservice when we are raising our young boys. When my son was young, he's 28 now, I always told him from an early age, it's okay to cry. It's okay to fall and be hurt, and acknowledge that, and you don't always have to win at something, and we raise, our society raises boys to grow up to be these men who, now feel that they can't reach out for help. But they are hurting. They are desperately hurting. And when men come to me, you know, it's interesting that, at first, their guard is up because, they're maybe a little embarrassed because, again, they want to be seen as what we call a man, strong and not
Mhm.
showing emotions. But the moment you ask them, direct questions like, how are you really feeling? Boy, it just comes right out. They are in such hurt, and they too have the anxiety, the stress. But we think that men just move on, and they don't even miss their children when the kids are not there. That is so far from the truth. I have
Definitely.
Right? People think that when dads, don't have the kids, that it's just one big bachelor social life, and they're not missing the kids. So far from the truth. It's on weekends that I hear from my clients who are so sad, and because they're not with their kids, and they're missing them terribly, and they don't know really how to cope with that. So I'm here to tell you, or tell your viewers, men hurt. They hurt just as much as women. Their mental health takes a bigger hit than women do actually going through a divorce, hence why the suicide rate, sadly, is so high.
Yeah, you know what, and you touched on three things that I want to speak on that I definitely agree with you. One of them was the fact that men do hurt,
Mhm.
and from that experience, I can speak for myself, of my experience of going through divorce and being separated from my daughter, and my daughter my daughter would often, growing up, everyone would call her my shadow because everywhere I was at, she was with me, and so to go from, you know, uh, if you can think of a person that's walking out in the sun and your shadow is right behind you everywhere you go, and now one day you walk out and the sun is still shining, but there's no shadow,
Right.
there's no one behind you, and so even with that, definitely I understand that there is some hurt there from men when you're going through this process. And the second thing that you mentioned was even the suicide of men going up, especially going through um, a heavy divorce. And my situation, even I contemplated suicide, and I talk about it all the time because
Yeah.
I wanted to get it out that it's not unnormal, that everyone can be under so much pressure at some point in their life where they think about it. And I think it's more common than we like to admit that sometimes we're under immense pressure, and immense stress and emotional stress, that there are some times when we think about it. And unfortunately, for me, during that time period, I was going through divorce. Excuse me. I was going through a heavy debt, um, uh, being laid off from work and things like that. And on top of all of that, in that same time period, my mom passed away, and
Oh,
so it was that whole load that was on me in that time period. Plus adding with the divorce, that I contemplated suicide myself. And one of the things that was able to help pull me out of that was to change my focus off myself and focus on my daughter, and be like, what would her life be like without me, and that helped pull me back, from the edge that I was at. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is, I was actually having this conversation the other day with someone, and they was like, well, it seems like men just move on so quickly, and I said, no, that's not necessarily the case. And so this is how I explain it. Men uh men don't move on quickly. We just move on when we see that it's finally over,
yes.
because generally while we're still fighting, especially I'm talking about, good devoted husbands, not men who cheated, not those men, but men who really love their family and love their spouse and love their children and love the life that they've built. We're in it for the fight as long as we know that there's something that's there to fight for. So when we get to the point where we realize, okay, it's over, then it's over. Then it's time to move. And when it's time to move, and it seems like get over things so quickly, the way I explain it is men work through stuff by working on stuff. Right.
Oh, I like.
Right. So I can't work on this marriage anymore because it's over. So now I have to find something else to work on, And so again, that could be picking up more, work more at work, or work more at your leisure, work more into other substances. I have to find something to fill this void. And the way I explained it was in the beginning, in the garden, when men messed up, with the situation with Adam and Eve, when God told Adam, what he said was, you messed up, so now you have to till the land, now you have to work. And so our defense mechanism, when something is broken, we find something to work on. It's like, oh, it didn't work, I got to find something to work. And unfortunately, from the outside looking in, maybe from the ex-wife or whatever, it's like, oh, you just went right into another relationship. Well, not necessarily. I'm just looking for something to work on, and that just happened to be the thing that I found to work on. You know?
But
So
that's so true what you're saying. That is so true, and I say that because I've heard the same thing. How from women, like, men just move on. But, early on when I was working, I worked with both men and women in the very early years. I decided I needed to work with just men. And another reason was because I found what you just said to be true. Men wanted to work on what was wrong, fix it and then move on. Men did not want to stay stuck. They didn't want to see themselves as a victim. And the women who are coming to me, and I'm not saying this is about all women, not at all, but the women who are coming to me really did not want to do the work to move forward. They wanted to remain in this story and also this, label of a victim. And, here the men were just wanting to do the work, heal, and get on with their life. And what's wrong with that? But for some reason, again, people think, oh, well, clearly he doesn't hurt. Well, no, that's not true. He's doing the work. He's not wanting to stay stuck. But people don't know that man may be on medication because he's got severe depression or anxiety. We're very quick to just judge what we see from the outside when we have no clue what's really going on.
Right, definitely not, and that's why again I appreciate the work that you do, especially as a woman working with men and being brave enough to step in that arena. Because, like we mentioned earlier, when you decide to stand up against the norm, it's unfortunate that some of your biggest critics would be other women, and so I applaud you,
Thank you.
and as well as some of the other guests that I've had on, women who've worked with men, doing different parts of them lives to help them to heal. So again, I want to thank you so much for this conversation. It's really been enlightening. I'm really glad that again that you do the work that you do. So last thing, I'll let you have the last say so. To leave us with some kind of a ray of hope, I guess, to some of the men that may be going through divorce at this time, or even something to the women, the ex-wives, whatever you want to call them, to let them know that the men are human too. But I'll let you have you decide to address that.
Well, thank you,
Again,
Ernest.
also give my listeners your information where they can get in contact with you, where they can follow you at, all of those type things, all your social media handles, and I'll let you have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for shedding light on this subject, about men. First, let me say to your female viewers out there, I love women. I support women, but I'm helping you too. You may not see it that way, but I'm helping the family. I have men come to me sometimes who are very angry and, don't want to play ball, and be fair and co-parent in a healthy manner. But I get them to that point where they do. And therefore it helps you out there, and so I want women to also think about that the next time they want to, chastise a woman for supporting men, and give them a little slack and think about that maybe they are also being impacted by, a woman helping maybe her ex-husband, to be, a team player with her, really.
Mm-hmm.
And to your male viewers out there who are possibly going through a divorce or custody issue, I want to tell you, A, there is support out there, and B, reaching out for support is vital. It's an act of bravery. I don't say that loosely. I mean every word of it. You are not going to go through this without being unscathed, without it affecting your mental health. Like Ernest, you had said, saddened to hear that you contemplated suicide. So therefore, for the sake of your children, reach out for support, and get yourself a lifeline and somebody who will be there unconditionally for you, because we all know that you hurt just as much as women do. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, I always do a 1-hour free consultation just to see what's going on, if we're a good fit. But sometimes it's just taking that step. It doesn't cost you a penny just to, hear something from a woman and someone who's unbiased as well. My website, is thedivorcecoachformen.com. I can also be reached on Instagram, same thing, the Divorce Coach for Men. And that's where I'm always posting. But if you go on my website, there's a lot of blogs too that, will help you possibly with parental alienation, what to look for, how to deal with it. But I do say that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And if you don't think there is, I'm here to tell you there is. And I would be happy to, talk to you and speak to you about it for an hour, free, no obligation, but just, to shed light that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
All right. And I think that within itself, just having that conversation would be a great breakthrough for most men. Hayley, again, I want to thank you so much for being on. I'm truly been enlightened with this conversation, and I know that the listeners will find some substance in it. I hope that there's some ex-wife or mom that, would look at their situation a little bit different now. And again, like I said earlier, take yourself out of it for a minute and just think about, how would you like your brother to be treated? How would you like your son to be treated? How would you like, your uncles to be treated if they had to stand, if they unfortunately had to go through a divorce? But if that was their situation, how would you like for them to be treated in the midst of it? And I'm sure if you look at it from that point of view, you would, they would also agree that they want them to be treated fairly. So again, Hayley, thank you so much for being on. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Again, this is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And our mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. So until next time, we will see you guys next week. Be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.